Integrated Life Choices has been inspiring opportunities for individuals with disabilities for more than 15 years in Lincoln and across Nebraska by offering a number of services. From group homes to independent living resources and job training, you'll find the support that allows people to live fulfilling lives. They're also hiring. If you're looking for a rewarding career supporting people with developmental disabilities, you can check out open positions along with learning more about services at ilc.net. Integrated Life Choices.
My dream was to work in commercial banking, but it required a college degree and I didn't have one. I found out that Doane had classes for adult learners on the Lincoln campus and online. So I earned my bachelor's degree, and 5 months later, I landed my dream job. I decided to continue my education, and now I'm working on my MBA at Doane. For me, the Doane experience has been life-changing.
Your home is your empire. Protect it with Empire Fence. Get a free instant quote with the online estimating tool at empire-fence.com. See an upfront estimate with no hidden fees. An Empire Fence can provide privacy and improve the appearance of your home. Keep kids and pets in or out of your yard. Increase security and add value to your property. Visit empire-fence.com now to view the stylish and maintenance-free possibilities for your home and get a free instant online quote. Let Empire Fence protect your empire.
This is the Happy Hour.
You guys going to happy hour?
Coming at you live from the heart of Lincoln, America.
Yeah, I'll come for a couple.
Here are your hosts, Nick Sainert.
I want to know what it's like to commit a crime without having to spend time in jail.
And Enrique Alvarez Clary.
C is for chunk.
Brought to you by Empire Fence and Netting on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Busy day here on 93.7 The Ticket, as there are several state championship games we are calling. Good job by Nick Sainert and Raph out there for the first of our games today. Class C1, Wahoo and Boone Central, and congratulations to Boone Central with a 12-0 victory over Wahoo. And now they are your state champions for 2023. Kind of funny because as they were kind of going through the stats too, they kind of figured out that Wahoo had given up 4 points on the year and Boone Central or 4 points per game on the year. I think maybe it was the other way around. Wahoo gave up 5 points per game on the year and Boone Central 4 points per game on the year. And then this game finished 12-0. That's my type of football. I love that sort of thing. And
the over hit, right? If you combine 4 and 5, that's 9. So you take the over.
It's kind of a high scoring affair between Wahoo and Boone Central, I suppose you could say. But obviously, a lot of people expecting the same thing this Friday when Nebraska and Iowa play. Do you see Nebraska's now kind of taking as the betting odds favorite in that game? You find that odd?
Yes, I do find it odd to turn the phrase. Find it odds, find it odd, everything in between. But it speaks to the Big Ten West. Like, how many times is a 9-2 number 16 team in the country a road underdog to a team who hasn't qualified for a bowl yet? I find it hard to imagine that's happened more than a handful of times before, or a similar situation. It just speaks to the Big Ten West, though. What Iowa has done is what Iowa always does. Attrition's the heck out of games. Defense, special teams, enough offense in key moments sometimes. Iowa wins those games. The rest of the Big Ten West right now has, won their share, lost their share. It's a coin flip for other teams. For Iowa, they find a way to win them. So the spread reflects that this should be another game that comes down to the wire, another coin flip type of game. I don't know why Nebraska would be favored in this game. I don't know what metrics say Nebraska deserves to have a home edge. Even if you just give Nebraska the home field goal, you take that away, it's still Iowa by 1.5, which these two teams have played close games recently. I get that, but Iowa's 9-2. They win these games. This is one where maybe the numbers tell you one thing or tell Vegas one thing. The eye test says Iowa's figured this out. They have it down to a science. Nebraska's still trying to figure it out. I don't think Nebraska should be favored, But it's not to say Nebraska won't make it a game. It won't be competitive like it has been the last few years.
Yeah, and certainly could win it. I mean, it's not just like a one. It's not like this is a team thing for Iowa. This is a program thing. That's why it's even more surprising. If this was just a team, throw any of them out there, North Carolina or something, and the team looked like this, and you'd just be, well, this is kind of odd. They don't have exactly everything put together this year, and we'll kind of see what they can put together in offense next season. That would be one thing, but this is basically who Iowa's been for the past several years without much of an offense, and they found a way to win with defense and special teams. And it was kind of interesting last year's game. Obviously, Cooper DeJean goes out early, and from there they couldn't stop Trey Palmer.
Hey, guess what? Cooper DeJean's out this year again.
Yeah, it is. It happened again. Maybe fortunately for Nebraska, obviously unfortunately for DeJean in Iowa, but it was like the if you watched Iowa football, it's like everything that they don't do, they did that game. And it was just kind of like this. It was weird listening to on the broadcast this past week as Iowa beat Illinois, finished it up. It was a close game, 15-13. They needed a few defensive plays at the end to get off the field. That's Iowa football. That's kind of how it goes. But I heard the commentators say, yeah, I mean, they were a game away from doing this last year if it wasn't for some injuries. And I go, well, yeah, I mean, I guess you could say that. That's kind of a sweeping statement, but I think it'll be fun this year. Obviously, it's kind of interesting too because Iowa has wrapped up the West. They do maybe can focus on the Big Ten in front of them. I think that they would be motivated by what happened last year and to get the payback and to end Nebraska season and that sort of thing. But I did see Iowa beat reporter asking the question to the Iowa fan base, should Iowa rest some starters? Do you think there is any sort of that going into this game for Iowa?
I don't. I think if this was a more professional setting, and again, we can be college sports becoming more and more professional by the minute, all we want. But I think given that this is college and it's such a key rivalry game, I was going to be plenty motivated. I wanted to talk about this throughout the week because on the one hand, I think Nebraska should have an intangible edge. They've lost 3 in a row. They're desperate. They need to play hungry. I mean, everything that they can accomplish this season is on the line. A bowl game, a chance to get there, to get those 15 more practices, to put more good tape out there against a quality opponent in Iowa. Nebraska should be hungry, coming back home, fueled by the way these last 3 weeks have gone, and motivated to prove last year wasn't a fluke. That even though Cooper DeJean went out early, even though Trey Palmer and Casey Thompson are gone, there's still a good chunk of this team that's around, and that they can do it again. That Iowa's not going to, run off 8 in a row again. Nobody runs off 9 in a row against Nebraska unless you're Wisconsin and it's 10.
That's right.
But I think Nebraska should be plenty motivated for all those reasons. But I posed that question to both Sam McEwen and Tom Chattel on Sunday during the Husker Extra Hour. They both said Iowa had the intangible edge. My thought would be, well, yeah, do they rest starters? Are they focused more on the championship game? Is this a chance, like a game to get some red shirts in just to see what you have, rest some starters, keep them healthy? But what Sam and Tom both said was that Iowa has taken this game more seriously than Nebraska has. They've made it into a bigger deal across the border. So even with them having wrapped up the division, the spite is real. They want to keep Nebraska out of a bowl game. The revenge is real. They want to make last year the fluke. Like, yeah, that can't happen again. They beat us at our place. We're going to go beat them at their place. So I don't think that Iowa's motivation is going to be a problem. You just hope Nebraska can match that fire and that intensity.
Well, and it's going to be tough to tell either way because I think one way or the other, it's going to be a low-scoring ball game. And so, I mean, maybe it's hard to tell. Like, motivation's always kind of something tough to tell to begin with. And
we can ascribe it after the game.
Yeah, you throw it out there at times, but usually it's lackadaisical tackling and bad effort or whatever. If you can measure that too. But I mean, neither offense is going to score that much. I mean, if one does, if either of these teams get into the 30s. Then I will question effort. I will question motivation because they're neither team is just built like that. So I mean, if you really look at Nebraska's spark that they had in the first quarter, obviously Chubba Purdy probably expected to get the start again this week. you can hope for maybe a quick dash like that. But other than that, do you expect Nebraska's offense to be better? I think a lot of the excitement obviously was over a few first quarter big plays for Purdy. He didn't turn the ball over, which is better than his predecessors until the final play, obviously on a desperation. So I think in that way it's good, but and I think it kind of looked a little bit better maybe to your eyes just because he didn't throw these interceptions. He'd run out of bounds on scrambles instead of trying to throw something late. Do you expect Nebraska's offense to have more punch to it with Purdy, especially against an Iowa defense like this?
That's the hope. Do I expect it? Absolutely not. We kind of know what this offense is. You mentioned Iowa being defense first, not a good offense. Well, guess who's right down there with them?
Yeah.
Nebraska is this year. I think that the offense looked more comfortable, didn't look as jittery in the pass game. Not as much hold on for dear life. Where's this going to go? Because Chubba Purdy hit those couple throws early. Did it in a 2-minute situation as well when Wisconsin expected a lot of passing to happen. So I think Nebraska does have more options. I think, though, that it's still Iowa's defense. It's still Nebraska's offense. You don't want to overreact to a drive against Maryland and a game against Wisconsin. Yeah, Chubba Purdy looked better than the other guys have so far this year. He looked more in control, in command. Nebraska could do a little bit more with him. But again, he dropped to third on the depth chart for a reason. Maybe it was just injury. Those other guys proved something too. So it's on Nebraska to honestly make the game look like last year's. Make the game look like Wisconsin. But how did Nebraska win Iowa last year but lose Wisconsin last week? Turnovers. Nebraska had, 4 turnovers forced against Iowa in last year's Black Friday game. They didn't get a single turnover against Wisconsin in this one. Iowa's not going to put the ball at risk, right? They're content to make those 60 minutes go by as fast as possible and get on to Indianapolis. Nebraska's going to have to force a fumble or two. I really think that's the way. I don't think Iowa's going to want to throw it much. So if the defense can regain its rush defense form, again, 40 carries for 165 yards on the ground for Wisconsin. About a third of that came from Tanner Mordecai. If you hold Braylon Allen to less than 3 yards per carry, I'd like to think you could do that to Iowa's run game as well. I don't think Hill's nearly as much of a threat, but Nebraska's run defense has to be at the level it was over really the first 8 weeks of the year.
Yeah, I mean, again, their offense isn't great, but even worse so is their passing game. Their running backs can get going. I mean, they've got some talented running backs back there. Both average in Williams and Johnson, both average over 4 yards per carry. Nothing amazing, obviously, as far as in the touchdown column or in the yards column, because there's not a whole lot of complement to it,
right?
And so I'm interested to see too, kind of the pace of this game. Which side, or if Nebraska decides to kind of throw the ball a little bit more, because Iowa, they're pretty predictable on offense, and they're very much okay with punting. They're very much okay with taking a field goal instead of a touchdown. And I think we've already seen that again, those questions. And I thought it was interesting that Matt Rhule compared the Wisconsin situation, the 2-minute drill, to the Maryland situation. And basically saying that there was all these complaints about how he handled one compared to the other when they were two different situations. And obviously it's also just interesting to hear a coach with his ear to the crowd of Nebraska and what they're saying. But I hope, because I think that they've lost a few games by not playing Kirk Ferentz ball this year, that Nebraska doesn't lose another one by not playing Kirk Ferentz ball.
But let me ask you that. What is your game plan if you're Nebraska? Because you're not going to out Iowa. That was maybe the formula that you wanted to do, but either you're not good enough at it consistently to do it long enough, or you don't have the commitment to it. Nebraska's not going to air it out, right? Even with Chubba Purdy looking better, even with another big touchdown from Jalen Lloyd, Nebraska's going to have to hit big plays. We haven't seen a lot of explosive designed runs from Nebraska. It's been a lot on those scramble drills. So if I'm Nebraska, yes, I want to run the ball. I want to be able to find a way to dictate the pace and the flow of the game. But do you trust Nebraska to match up and play Iowa football against Iowa? I don't. So I think Nebraska can't be afraid to take chances when the opportunities present themselves.
That's interesting. I mean, because too, I'm a little bit worried about taking chances because this they quite frankly haven't been great in their trick plays. They've gone to them rarely. Obviously, a very turnover prone team. This is just the recipe that Iowa wants for you is to take those chances, to make those mistakes, jump on your turnovers. The only good side of that is, they're not as equipped to benefit off those turnovers that they create. I mean, they're kind of the opposite of Nebraska, where if they create turnovers, it doesn't necessarily lead to a win. Nebraska, we've been saying that all year. Nebraska somehow has been able to create or have their own turnovers and not hurt them as much in certain games, though it has kind of bit them in the last several outside of this past one.
Whose offense is better, Northwestern's or Iowa's?
Probably Northwestern.
See, Northwestern probably on the whole, but I like Iowa's run game right now better than anything Northwestern did. So if Iowa, gets a turnover on Nebraska's side of the field, they will be content to run it for 4 yards to carry until they're in the end zone. Northwestern, I don't think, was able to do that against Nebraska, which led to Nebraska being to push Northwestern out of field goal range or into long field goal range. So if you're Nebraska, obviously don't turn the ball over, ever, if you can help it. If you're going to turn it over, do it further down the field, right? And then get stops on first and second down, put Iowa in third and long, take your chances, play your defense in third and long, and then don't let Tory Taylor punt from the 50. Make him punt from Iowa's 25 or 30. Yeah, he can still flip the field, but you give yourself a better chance of having better field position.
Yeah, it'll be fun to break down. Of course, we got all week to still do it. There's some news out of Husker camp involving Tony White and Ty Robinson. We'll take a break. We'll talk about that coming up next year. This is Happy Hour on 93.7 The Ticket.
It's the best time of the year to order a new John Deere self-propelled windrower from Landmark Implement during the early order program. Hay harvest is a race against time. Order a new John Deere self-propelled windrower to harvest your hay quickly and efficiently while promoting quick dry down for high-quality hay. Now is the time to lock in the best price of the year. Contact your local Landmark location for full details on a new self-propelled windrower and experience the Landmark difference.
Herrick Services takes this time to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. We are thankful for many things this year and every year and hope that everyone is able to enjoy time with family and friends as we reflect on what we're thankful for. This important message comes to you from Bart and the folks at Herrick Services, your vending specialist here in Lincoln. Their quality service and expertise has earned them a fine reputation. That's Herrick Services, on the air because they care. If you're in Seward or Milford, listen up. Select Plumbing is now servicing your area with no trip charges from Lincoln. Select Plumbing works on a variety of issues for your home and business, including general plumbing, water heaters, faucet and fixture repair, underground sewer and water repairs, backflow testing, and more. Keep your property free from leaks and other issues. Call today for a free estimate, 402-560-6197. It's not just Lincoln, Waverly, and the surrounding area anymore. It's also Seward and Milford with no trip charges. Contact Select Plumbing to inquire at 402-560-6197.
Great news. I just got the State Farm personal price plan on our home and auto insurance.
You told our agent about my thing for romance novels?
No, you don't have to get that personal. Our agent just helped me choose affordable options to create a personalized price just for us.
Oh, sweet. Then you won't believe the love triangle Jen is in now.
Call your local State Farm agent, Vinny Krekak, at 402-474-1173.
Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
Before you cut the turkey with family and friends, bring them to the Icebox the night before on Wednesday, November 22nd, as the Lincoln Stars host the Tri-City Storm at 7:05. It's the Stars' annual Thanksgiving Eve game tradition, and you won't want to miss out on the beer specials, scraps, goals, and much more. Lock in your seats today for the Stars versus the Storm at LincolnStars.com.
What do you think of when you hear the chocolate season? Artisan chocolates? Of course. They have the best chocolates this side of the Atlantic. Friendly neighborhood coffee shop? Yup, they're that too. A nationally recognized top-tier brunch spot. Waffle weekends, baby. And the place to grab a gift for literally any occasion? Everybody loves chocolate. See for yourself at The Chocolate Season, 40th and Old Cheney, or order ahead online at thechocolateseason.com.
Problem gambling affects millions of Americans daily, of all ages and walks of life. If your loved one is struggling with addiction, contact Choices Treatment Center's 24-hour helpline at 402-476-2300. That's 402-476-2300.
Tune in to 93.7 The Ticket as soon as the clock hits 0 for the Jay Foreman postgame show. Listen to expert analysis from the Husker Hall of Famer, an 8-year NFL veteran, for 90 minutes after the game. The Jay Foreman postgame show, sponsored by Tanner's Bar and Grill, Vinny Kreekak, and Action Plumbing, Heating, AC, and Electrical on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. You're listening to the Happy Hour with Nick Sainert.
Even before you start. That was a preemptive shh.
And Enrique Alvarez Clary.
I already had someone created in my image. He's evil, he wants to take over the world, and he fits easily into most overhead storage bins.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
We are back with you here at 93.7 The Ticket, 1040 O Street. If you haven't dropped by, get some coffee at the mill. Check the place out. It's very cool, especially on Husker Game Day. If you can stop by on a Black Friday this week, Nebraska takes on Iowa. We got some football still coming up for you on The Ticket today. This is kind of our in-between show. We're on the happy hour. You can tell I'm not Nick Sainert. He's not Rico, but that's okay. Class C2 championship game will kick off around 2:45, so we'll send it back out to Memorial Stadium, and Nick Sainert waiting on the call for Norfolk Catholic and Ord. Pregame shows beginning at around 2:30. Until then, we can sit and talk some sports with you here, myself and Austin. And it's a good day for Nebraska football. Very interesting, the press conferences that we've had over the last couple of days. And we can touch on Tony White in a second, because that's basically what yesterday was all about, was Coach Rule saying, yeah, there's interest, and yeah, I'd push him on to become a head coach, which we could talk about that in a second. Because there's also reports that San Diego State has contacted Tony White. But bigger news maybe for Nebraska, as far as what, really kind of setting in stone, though nothing is set in stone, but at least feeling good about what's coming up next year, is that junior defensive end Ty Robinson announced at the podium today that he is planning on returning for his senior year next year. We're still going through kind of the COVID years and stuff like that. So some of these juniors have decisions to make about whether they want to stick around, similar to kind of what Garrett Nelson had last year. Ty Robinson, to me, though I believe he still has just one sack this year, has been in the backfield a lot. He's causing a lot of havoc. He's come along to probably, along with Nash Hutmaker, maybe a few other guys, a guy that you can call the best player on defense. I thought especially against Maryland, he stood out. Not as much against Wisconsin, but in any case, huge news for Nebraska to get Ty Robinson back. Nash Hutmaker hopefully will make a similar decision, as he is also a junior that probably could forego if he wanted to give the shot at the NFL now.
So we were going back trying to figure out how it's Ty Robinson's 6th year. He was at Nebraska in 2019, redshirted. First year he played was 2020, so that gets wiped off the books. Played in 2021, 2022, 2023 is his junior season by eligibility. So he does have next year available to him. That's how the math works out there. Definitely in the conversation for Nebraska's best defensive player, even though the numbers aren't there. Just that one sack, like you said, has 4 tackles for loss, and has already tied his career high in total tackles with 27 right now, but 5 passes deflected.
Yeah.
That tells me that's a guy that's learning the savvy of it, not just the physical skills. Did recover a fumble as well. He's been a leader on that defensive line. He's really stepped his game up this year. I think he's found a scheme and a fit that works for him. I think we can credit Terrence Knighton for some of that as well with his work there. But a guy like Ty Robinson coming back, you can see both sides of it. The reason he would come back, the reasons he listed for coming back, is that Ty Robinson said he wants to reach his potential at Nebraska before he goes to the NFL. That's commendable. That's respectable. Nebraska fans should love to hear that. You want to see a guy be great for your school. Kudos to Ty Robinson for that. Also, with the injury, he said he feels like he can get better. He's only on like week 3 of football, is what he called it, based on how long he was out with the injury. So Ty Robinson thinks there's still plenty more for him to accomplish at Nebraska. He could be right. Can he break down and get a few more sacks? Can Cam Lenhart step up? Can Nash Hutmacher come back and maybe funnel guys back to Ty Robinson to improve those numbers, maybe. But you have to acknowledge the risk. If Ty Robinson were to get hurt again, or if he plateaus, he might have missed his best opportunity to go to the pros, right? I'm sure there are plenty of decision makers in NFL front offices that are enamored of his skills, of his size, and could see an NFL difference maker. I'm sure there's just as many that say, well, why'd he just put it together now? He's an older guy. Where's the star potential? Just a few games at the end of the year, even when he's really come on strong, that's not enough of a sample size. We want to see more. So I think for Ty Robinson, coming back to school raises his ceiling in terms of his NFL draft stock, even though he'll be a year older. If he does produce, teams will say, yes, that's an NFL difference maker from day one. We'll draft him plug and play. The flip side is if he plateaus, then in retrospect, he didn't capitalize on the moment, didn't seize the momentum with his draft stock. And now he's in Garrett Nelson territory, like you were saying, where fringe draft pick, undrafted free agent and bouncing around type of guy just because of his age.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to kind of question, is that where he is now? And maybe part of it is the NFL, whoever he's reached out to, kind of the grades that he's got back on that is. But I do think he is starting to flash. Like you said, I mean, those 5 pass deflection he has, I think, feel like 4 of them have been in the last 2 weeks. I mean, I do feel like he's coming along and making a difference there. And I know, this is obviously a different comparison, but in a very slight degree, just in the commonalities of it all, it does remind me of Ndamukong Suh a little bit, because his junior year, he could have came out, been a second-round draft pick, late first-round draft pick. But by the end of his junior year, you could see if this guy comes back, he is going to wreak havoc. He is going to put up some numbers, and obviously he did. Came back, had an all-time season for any defensive player in college football history. Again, Ty Robinson, not Ndamukong Suh, not on that level. But I do think that the fact that he is starting to flash and he's looking better than we ever have seen him as a Husker, is a very good reason for him to come back. Like you said, maybe he could take advantage of that, as in, I'm hot right now, this is a good time to go. But it also could be one of those things, and a guy that's been here 6 years is that you see it all the time. How many times this COVID year is kind of a gift. How many times do you see a guy just come on in senior year and say, man, where has this been? This guy gets it. This is like, he's finally really kind of figured out college football, and he's at that high level. Too bad he doesn't have any eligibility left. I think of, like a Matt O'Hanlon, who really kind of came on his senior season. There's obviously a lot of different guys to pick from there, but I really do. I like the way that he's been playing. I could see him coming back and being one of the best defensive linemen in the Big Ten.
And that's what he's betting on. And if you're one of the best defensive linemen in the Big Ten, you're one of the best defensive linemen in the country. Like, that's not a small title. Think about how, Wisconsin and Iowa got good, because they have a lot of older guys. But at the same time, the NFL draft, for as much as it looks at production, it does look at age as well.
Yeah.
So, yes, Ty Robinson is absolutely correct, where he says, yeah, he wants to come back to Nebraska. He thinks there are plenty of skills and tools to sharpen. But that's also a bet on Terrence Knighton being the one to give him an NFL level education to make up for the fact that he will be an older prospect. The teams will factor that in to his draft position. So I'm happy Ty Robinson's back. That should be a huge boost for Nebraska football next year. Development's not linear. The onus is on Ty Robinson to find a way to get better throughout the whole offseason, to stay healthy. And even if he is making a big impact on games, getting double teams and getting close to quarterbacks, put up those numbers too, right? Put a team on your back. Find a way to get stronger and grab onto the jersey. Find a way to break down one step sooner and not get juked by a quarterback. All the skills, all the tools are there for Ty Robinson. The hope, the dream, the goal is that he puts it all together. The potential and the productivity, and has the best year of his career next year.
We're gonna go to break real quick, but there are a few guys like texting in and asking about some of these other guys. I think that it's worth going through this list and guys and deciding, how big it would be if they came back, and we can go through some of those lists. But I do think, just the way he's been coming on, to me, he would have been, 1A, 1B, or, the biggest name that I would have wanted to see or been interested in if he is going to decide to come back. And so, again, that's why I think this decision is so big for Ty Robinson in Nebraska in the future, especially with some questions about maybe who would be coordinating the defense if he does return next season. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Coming up next year, we'll continue Happy Hour here on 93.7 The Ticket.
The holidays are right around the corner. This is a great year to give your family and loved ones a gift of shoes to encourage them to stay active. Fleet Feet Lincoln fits you properly for shoes, and they offer a free group that meets 3 days a week, plus other training programs and a walking group on Mondays. Get healthy, stay healthy with proper shoe wear from Fleet Feet Lincoln and a group of friends that will support you and keep you accountable. Start your health adventure at Fleet Feet Lincoln at 77th and Pioneers.
Hi, it's Charlie Stone, and here with me is Andy Goodyear, General Manager of Honda of Lincoln. Andy, I know the new Honda sales are going really good right now at Honda of Lincoln, and with that, a lot of fresh trade-ins are coming in. Can you tell our listeners about your pre-owned selection?
I'm happy to, Charlie. Like you said, with new Honda sales going very good, we have a lot of fresh trade-ins coming in daily, and not just Hondas. We have just about every maker model you can imagine, with over 100 pre-owned and certified pre-owned to choose from, and prices starting at just $5,900.
Wow, what about financing?
We have financing as low as 3.29% APR on certified Accords and CRV.
Thanks again, Andy. People love the selection and great service at Honda of Lincoln. Maybe it's time you come experience the Honda of Lincoln way of doing business. 27th and Yankee Hill Road, or online at hondaoflincoln.com.
Big box stores are tempting for buying equipment for your high schooler in sports or for yourself in your sports leisures. But buying new is awfully expensive. Why not go somewhere with new and used options? Play It Again Sports is quality, slightly to gently used equipment, and 50% of their inventory is actually new equipment. And it's more than baseball, softball, and golf. They also have equipment for disc golf, fitness, hockey, and more. Plus, they're always buying products. Bring your gear you're done with and get trade money on the spot. Play It Again Sports at 48th and Vine.
Rosie Sports Bar and Grill. Open for lunch and dinner at 10th and P or at 1501 Center Park Road.
It's here, the day you've all been waiting for. Brown Shoe Fit Big Black Friday Sale. We have 20% off store-wide, plus take an additional 20% off the clearance racks with already low sale prices. Smartwool socks are buy 3, get the 4th pair free. Plus, we have JBU boots for $39.99. So come on down to Brown Shoe Fit's Big Black Friday Sale, going on all weekend long. Some exclusions may apply. See store for details. Brown Shoe Fit Lincoln, 66 and Q.
So what's this new concept happening at 1040 O Street? There's 93.7 The Ticket, there's The Mill Coffee and Tea, and there's Grandma's Bake Shop and Beatrice Bakery? Well, yeah, it's all of those things. It's a place for the community to hang out, grab a drink and a bite, and just chill, or work, or meet, or chat, or whatever you want to do. 93.7 The Ticket, The Mill Coffee and Tea, Grandma's Bake Shop and Beatrice Bakery, all together at 1040 O Street.
This is Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. Also online at theticketfm.com.
On the internet.
KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket. This is the Happy Hour.
You guys going to happy hour?
Coming at you live from the heart of Lincoln, America.
Yeah, I'll come for a couple.
Here are your hosts, Nick Sainert.
I want to know what it's like to commit a crime without having to spend time in jail.
And Enrique Alvarez Clary.
C is for chunk.
Brought to you by Empire Fence and Netting on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Happy Championship Tuesday to everybody out there. We've got a lot of high school football here on 93.7 The Ticket today. We already opened up with Boone Central's 12-0 victory over Wahoo, making Boone Central the Class C1 champion. We're waiting on Class C2 game. About to kick off here at around 2:45. We'll send it to pregame at 2:30. Nick Sainert out there. That's why you don't hear him now on Happy Hour. Myself and Austin filling in for Nick and Rico. Plenty to talk about, though, as the press conferences have the last couple of days been interesting in Nebraska football. I also think it's just it's kind of funny how all this season is playing out. I somewhat predicted, and I didn't go out on a limb, so I'm not as excited about this prediction. If I was really making some big statement. But I've been saying all along, this is probably a year that Nebraska's going to have to fight and scratch and claw and come down to Black Friday, whether they make a bowl game. And here we are. And it's interesting too, because I've heard it in the last couple of days as well, is where would this, how does this compare to last year's coaching job? And I think in a way, because obviously you want Matt Rule to have a better year one than half a year that you gave to an interim coach. And as it would play out in Nebraska football, because we always have to, it's a fight for mediocrity for the last 7 years. Is the fight for mediocrity continues in that only a victory against Iowa would give Matt Rule the quality of victory that was able to be had by an interim staff last year. So either way, I think. I don't know how people measure this year. I think as it's one of those things that I think is going to need some time. But a lot of it is going to depend, in my mind, on this week, because that was basically the bottom goal. I mean, you can't at Nebraska, you're not going to have any goal below 6 wins any season, regardless of kind of what happens. So kind of the least you could do to have a successful season is make a bowl game. And here we are once again coming down to a game against Iowa, which, by the way, is not unfamiliar territory. I mean, this is something that's happened a few times. I believe it happened under Mike Riley. Well, they went 5-7 and still got to a bowl game, so I guess that kind of canceled out. But I think it happened a few times under Scott Frost, and Nebraska's come up just short. Obviously, in these Iowa games, losing 7 out of 8. The outlier being last year's victory.
That's just the thing. Nebraska, to me, has felt like a 6-6 team all year, especially given the last 6 weeks. Nebraska won 3 coin flip games in a row. Nebraska lost 3 coin flip games in a row. 1 possession games where neither team played particularly well, but Nebraska found a way to beat Illinois, to beat Northwestern, and to beat Purdue. And then Nebraska found ways to lose to Michigan State, to Maryland, and to Wisconsin. Is the conversation about this team, Bach, any different if they hadn't rattled off 3 wins in a row and then 3 losses in a row? Say they alternated wins and losses over the last 6 weeks. Are we talking about this team any differently, even though the record's the same? I think we are. I think part of the consternation, the angst going into Friday is that Nebraska's lost 3 in a row. Think about the conversations going into Michigan State.
Yeah.
It's Nebraska right now is 5-3. Nebraska's mathematically alive for the Big Ten West. Nobody jinx it. Nobody say it, but it's there for the taking. Everything's on the table. November's looking favorable. Well, I'm not going to say Nebraska got in its own head about it, but Nebraska got away with some stuff in its 3 wins in October at the end of the month, and they caught up to Nebraska. A 6-6 team played like a 6-6 team, found ways to lose the games after finding ways to win the game. Had Nebraska, gone every other, beat Illinois, beat Purdue, and beat Maryland, but lost to Northwestern, who that be Michigan State and Wisconsin, or even flip those. If Nebraska goes 1-1, every other week, that's fine. I think we're talking about this team completely differently. It's, hey, okay, it's time to win again. We're going every other. Trends on Nebraska's side. They're at home. Intangible edge. Here we go. But losing 3 in a row, I think, has made the mood heavier than it needs to be for a team that's right where a lot of people expected it to be.
Yeah, no doubt. I think you're right. It's that Wisconsin thing, right? It's the 10 years, just it's kind of this program evaluation that we're all doing and frustrated. And how could this happen? You're losing to a bad Wisconsin team. And it always reminds me when these conversations happen of when Tim Beck said that's your, or not Tim Beck, Tim Miles said, don't put all that on me, because when Tim Miles came in, it was like, well, we haven't made the NCAA tournament all these years, and going back to Matt Rule last week saying when Nebraska did beat Wisconsin, or when this streak started, I suppose half the kids were 8 to 12 years old, so it has nothing to do with them, but it has everything to do with Nebraska football, the Nebraska football fans, and it's not just 10 years now; it's 4 coaches. I mean. It's tough. I mean, it is just a tough pill to swallow, and it gets worse and worse every year. And so even for myself, I think the frustration has started to mount up a little bit, because understandably, like some of these games, like the Michigan State one, that was one where Michigan State lost like 6 in a row. I mean, they had to get that one. So yes, there's going to be some frustration there, but you felt, okay, between Maryland and Wisconsin, maybe you can get it back. and just at anything. It was just we've been waiting for 3 weeks for to breathe easy, because as soon as you got to 6, it was like, okay, now anything from here is going to be kind of sugar on top. But at least you've got the that goal out of the way, and you're back to a bowl game and practices and just momentum for the program. Whereas if you finish this year with 4 straight losses and no bowl practice and no bowl games, you never release that breath, right?
You don't. And that's where I think, again, Nebraska as a 6-6 team doesn't know how to bury other teams yet, right? They kind of did against Purdue, but Illinois, you're holding on for dear life. Northwestern, you're holding on for dear life. Had plenty of chances against Michigan State before the final drive, didn't take advantage. Maryland, plenty of chances before the final drive, didn't take advantage. Even Wisconsin, you have 25 yards of offense in the third quarter. That should be impossible. 2.5 first downs in a quarter. Yeah. So Nebraska had plenty of chances before the last drives we've broken down. 7611 here on the text line says those weren't coin flip games. Okay, maybe not by the end, but going into the game, you could talk yourself into Nebraska winning for any reason or the other team winning for any reason, right? Illinois, physical. Brett Bielema has kind of owned Nebraska recently. Illinois down some of its star players, but more continuity. Nebraska on a short week coming off of Michigan. That's why Illinois could have won that game, even though Nebraska was in control. Up 17-6 on Northwestern in the fourth quarter. Well, remember, it was 10-6 before a long touchdown, and then Northwestern almost answered right back with a touchdown of its own before the defense stood up. But even going into the game, it's, hey, Northwestern's playing better football than we gave them credit for at the time. Like, this is probably going to be a classic Nebraska-Northwestern game that's a slugfest. And Purdue, Ryan Walters' defenses at Illinois gave Nebraska fits. Even though they're down some of their best players on both offense and defense recently, Ryan Walters, I think, was a good matchup for Purdue against Nebraska's offensive side. Hudson Card is one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten West. Not that that's saying much necessarily. So Nebraska had a lot to prove. So no, by the end of the game, it wasn't a coin flip. But going into the game, you would have been crazy to say, oh yeah, this is absolutely a Nebraska win, or oh, this is absolutely an opponent win.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much the case for Nebraska, especially with the struggling offense and the turnovers and all that. Basically, for sure, every team in the Big Ten, and probably just about every team in Power 5 football. I mean, there's a way Nebraska loses just about anybody, and it's not hard to envision. They just can't get enough points, and you give up a few big plays, and that's all it takes. And a lot of these games, like Wisconsin, there were several times, the 4th and 1, the field goal at halftime, that one play could have switched and changed that game. And I think you're going to expect to see that against Iowa. But again, you may have beaten Illinois, but you lost to Michigan State. So if you had to replay Illinois today, are you 100% convinced you'd beat Illinois? No. And I would say the same thing about the reverse of that. Like if they played Maryland today, maybe they'd beat Maryland. I'm not thinking, well, Maryland beat them by 3, so Maryland's going to beat them every time. That's not, that's just not how it goes, and not how the feeling is for this team as they battle, try to battle up and try to fight like heck to achieve this goal that other Nebraska teams have come up short in the last 7 years. And it's crazy to, again, as a historian or if a traditional Husker football fan, you feel weird saying those sentences, but it is what it is. We talk all the time about a culture at Nebraska and how do we get that better and what needs to be. And I always say it's a losing culture, and it's not because they're down about themselves. It's not because they walk around and they don't work hard enough. It's because they literally have not had a winning season since any of these guys have been here. So just before you have a winning culture, you have to win. Yeah, you have to get into the winning category. So maybe it's not in every way that you measure culture, but in just the truest form of, is it a winning or losing culture where they're not winning enough? And this, again, the brevity of this game is that this could be that switch. I mean, how much this 3, you could obviously go into offseason with 4 losses in a row and your momentum's kind of down. And then you hope you see what kind of happens in the transfer portal and your coordinators and all this stuff. And there's all this change that goes on. Whereas a victory this Friday, and then maybe you get a bowl game win, and then you have 7. This is not just a 6-6 season. You have a winning season and all the momentum moving forward from that. Again, that's a lot to be said about what could happen, but it's not with what we're talking about, randomly playing these Big Ten teams or whoever they get matched up in a bowl game, it wouldn't be a crazy scenario for Nebraska to win two games either here to close out the season.
It absolutely wouldn't. And again, that's the mark of a 6-6 team, right? You take Ohio State and Michigan over Nebraska pretty big, Penn State as well. Yeah. Anyone other than those three teams, you can't write Nebraska off, but you also can't guarantee anything. That's just the mark of an average football team. And I said this earlier in the year, Bach. I think it's worth revisiting. Nebraska doesn't really know what an average football team looks like. It's been 9 wins or greater every year in Tom Osborne's tenure. Frank Solich, I guess they had that 7-7 year. But besides that, we were talking about 5-7 under Callahan like it was the end of the world.
Oh, yeah.
That's an average football team that we didn't give credit for being essentially average. And now when you see 3-9, you see 4-8, scrounge out a 5 or 7 here and there, Nebraska fans, I think, are still used to the pinnacle or thinking anything that's not the pinnacle is the absolute nadir at the very bottom. When, hey, there's a lot of wiggle room in between these two things. I just think with the conversation around this team and just the lack of 6-6 bowl appearances for Nebraska, this is what, if you look at, the bell curve of teams, this is the peak of that bell curve. This is where most teams sit, is in this average range. You can beat anyone any given week. You can lose to anyone any given week. And this is what it feels like.
Well, and I think part of that, too, is just the complete difference. I know the defense got beat up, didn't tackle as well, didn't have their best game against Wisconsin. But, it's hard to watch Nebraska football and say that the offense is average because it's below average. So, there's parts of it that you can say, well, that's bad. And then on the flip side of it, and I've known this here in the station, it was some of the commentators here as well. I'll say the defense is good, and the defense won't do quite as good. They'll make a mistake, and then I'll hear back, see, they're not good. Well, they're still pretty darn good to help Nebraska be to where they are with a bad offense, but they're not great. They're not like the 99 defense. They're not the 2009 defense. I mean, we've seen great defenses. This is just a pretty darn good defense.
Would it, in your mind, be easier for Nebraska's defense to take the step from good to great, or Nebraska's offense to take the step from bad to mediocre or average? Which is the easier step to take?
I think that especially we'll see with Ty Robinson coming back. They're still, to me, and Terrell says this all the time, is that they got to start creating turnovers to kind of go from good to great. To me, there are a few different ways you could do that. In my mind, you could also kind of, I don't know how you would do it, but we've seen Nebraska do it in the past, and the JUCO ranks get a Levante David or a Randy Gregory. And again, that's talking about the best of the best in JUCO classes. So I understand it's not likely, but I think they could also go good to great with a few more additions that, maybe would have to be high end, all conference type of guys. And maybe that seems like a long ways away, but to me in the offense, there's not a whole lot of, there's none of the positions maybe outside of tight end. And that's hasn't been overwhelming this year either. Have a whole lot of depth, have a whole lot of absolute, these guys are going to be dudes in the future. So I think the offense probably has a further way to go to get to be average.
And see, I think the offense does have further to go, but I think it's an easier step to take. I really do. I mean, think about the step that Bo Pelini's teams were never able to take from 9 wins to 11 wins, winning the big game, right? It's harder to win those big games than it is to not let some of these mid-tier games slip away. To me, I think it's the same conversation for the offense, right? For the defense to go from being where it is, having performances that are good enough to win games, that deserve to win games with even an average offense, I think it's a smaller step, but a more difficult step to take than the offense just cutting 2 turnovers a game out. You have 2 more chances to score, to add a little bit to special teams, even to sprinkle that conversation in there, to not punt for 19 yards ever again, to not punt for 30 yards ever again, to not just average 40, but have a consistent 40, not boom or bust. I think better special teams makes the empty possessions by the offense look better, which puts the defense in better positions. So yes, the offense has been decimated by injuries. We've questioned plenty of play calls here, but I think it's simpler to clean up what the offense has done wrong, even if it doesn't raise the ceiling that high. If you can raise the floor for the offense, that helps raise the ceiling for the defense. So yes, there's more work for the offense, but I think that's a simpler fix than adding a new element to the defense.
I think that's a good point too. It's really hard to go from good to great, as to get to average from bad. maybe a few different things could just be tweaked, or obviously an off-season transfer portal, that sort of thing could help out quite a bit. So I think that's a good point. Again, I think the defense maybe is a big time playmaker away from kind of going to great, but it is. I mean, if you're giving up 18 points a game, that's really good. But to cut that down to like a great defense of giving up 11 or 12, I mean, you are talking about a smothering, suffering defense, and so one of the best in the nation. That would be quite impressive. We'll talk more about the possibilities, the probabilities of that happening, whether or not Tony White is on campus next year, because it was kind of a hush hush, don't say anything for a few weeks now. Now we've gotten to the point where Coach Rule addressed it yesterday, and the reports are now out on that Tony White was contacted about San Diego State, that opening there. So we'll talk about that coming up next year on 93.7 The Ticket.
It takes a great game plan to win a football game each week, and right now, it's time to plan a trip to get a new car at Mullen Motors. Just like on the football field, there's a wall of defense on the way to Mullen Motors. 48th Street is under construction from Layton all the way to Cornhusker Highway. But the lot at Mullen Motors is full of tons of great vehicles to drive home this fall for the ultimate touchdown. Mullen Motors, still open through road construction at 48th and Walker.
No taglines, just quality vehicles. Mullen Motors.
Join Planet Fitness now and get the PF Black Card for only $24.99 a month. You'll enjoy an upgraded experience with tons of perks.
Like access to more than 2,000 locations worldwide?
Yep.
And massage chairs?
Yes.
Can I bring a friend every time?
Sure.
Can my friend be a horse?
Nay. Sorry. Get the PF Black Card and feel fit-tacular. Only $24.99 a month. Our most popular membership, the PF Black Card, is your ticket to getting all the perks. Join today. See Club for details.
If you're in Seward or Milford, listen up. Select Plumbing is now servicing your area with no trip charges from Lincoln. Select Plumbing works on a variety of issues for your home and business, including general plumbing, water heaters, faucet and fixture repair, underground sewer and water repairs, backflow testing, and more. Keep your property free from leaks and other issues. Call today for a free estimate, 402-560-6197. It's not just Lincoln, Waverly, and the surrounding area anymore. It's also Seward and Milford with no trip charges. Contact Select Plumbing to inquire at 402-560-6197.
Elway Power Sports of Lincoln will have you scoring big on savings with up to $3,000 off CF Moto side-by-sides and ATVs. Whether you're looking for a work-tough U-Force or a performance-ready Z-Force, CF Moto has a machine made for you all under one roof at our new 27th and I-80 location. And don't miss our Black Saturday sales event on November 25th with doorbusters and specials throughout the store. Visit our website, elwaypslincoln.com for more details.
Acres, your premier John Deere dealer, has the largest selection of late model equipment in the Midwest. And for a limited time, Acres is offering low rate financing on all 2021 and 2022 S and X Series combines and 8 Series tractors. Qualified buyers can earn 3.9% financing for 60 months. And as an added bonus for your holiday season, if you purchase one of Acres' eligible machines before December 31st, you'll get a $5,000 gift card from Shields. Go to acres.com to learn more.
Before you cut the turkey with family and friends, bring them to the Icebox the night before on Wednesday, November 22nd, as the Lincoln Stars host the Tri-City Storm at 7:05. It's the Stars' annual Thanksgiving Eve game tradition, and you won't want to miss out on the beer specials, scraps, goals, and much more. Lock in your seats today for the Stars versus the Storm at LincolnStars.com.
Walters Painting in Lincoln reminds us that each member of our military is someone who's given up the comforts of home. A military care package reminds them that that sacrifice is appreciated. Search online today and find out how easy it is to let our troops know that we care. This message is from Walters Painting in Lincoln, serving the area 30 years. For all of your painting needs, call 402-730-1781. Walters Painting, helping to give our troops the comforts of home they deserve.
We're bringing heaven to Lincoln with a waffle unlike anything you've ever experienced. Heavenly Waffles combines an incredibly fluffy recipe packed with protein and a medley of angelic toppings. To elevate the experience beyond your typical waffle and syrup, take the opportunity to try out this divine creation and pair it with a coffee from the mill as we celebrate Heavenly Waffles Wednesday from 8 to 11 a.m. at the 93.7 The Ticket studio.
Enjoy some heavenly waffles this Wednesday, November 22nd at the 93.7 The Ticket Studios on 1040 O Street. Parking available on 11th Street or in nearby garages.
College football in Lincoln, America. The time has come. Start your game day off right with the A1 Automotive Ticket Tailgate pregame show. Join the ticket crew as they bring you all the coverage you need to get you ready for the action. It's the A1 Automotive Ticket Tailgate pregame show, powered by Sunbelt Rentals. Ben Bleicher with Professional Realty Group of BHHS Ambassador, Select Plumbing, Jimmy John's, Lincoln Wall to Wall Wine and Spirits, Fleet Feet, Yours Cheese Spread on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. You're listening to the Happy Hour with Nick Sainert and Enrique Alvarez Clary.
When I gave you the cookie, I heard very clearly, I don't think about you, Schmidt.
Why would I think about you?
Because we're friends. We're not animals.
We're men. The only time a man is allowed to think about another man is when that man is Jay Cutler.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Jake Bachman, Austin Orman in here with you on 93.7 The Ticket. We're calling it the Happy Hour just because we wanted to sound cool like Nick and Rico. So they got some nice beats for us to get going. No, but in all seriousness, Nick is still preparing for a big day of action. He's got another Class C2, actually, a game coming up here at 2:45. Number 1, Norfolk Catholic, and number 3, Ord. He is also going to be calling tonight's Class A state championship game between number 1, Omaha Westside, and number 3, Elkhorn South.
Amon Green on the color commentary for that one tonight.
So that'll be a good one. That is set to kick off at 7:15, pregame at 7. Always a good time. You like this time of year? You get to see kind of the smaller towns move into Lincoln and be around downtown?
It's fun. It absolutely is. I mean, what a great reward for those schools, right? To be able to represent their towns on the stage, right? I think I'm guilty of having a very Eastern Nebraska bias.
Oh, yeah.
And also just in terms of what I've chosen to pay attention to, I just don't give a lot of thought to these, small towns or small town football, but part of me wishes and part of me wants to get back on that train to pay more attention, give those towns their dues, because they're playing some good football, like legitimately good football. Now, 12-0, that's a defensive slugfest, right? It fits right in with what we've seen in Memorial Stadium here throughout the rest of the year. Even 21-0, Bennington and Scott last night. It's awesome. What a treat for those kids. What a treat for those families to make the trip to Lincoln to, for some of them, play where they'll be playing, down the road. But for some of them, it's their only chance, their only way to experience what it's like to play a game in the cathedral that they grow up, worshiping in from a distance, for lack of a better phrase. So it's great to see these small towns come together, all the pride that they have in their schools and in their players, to see these towns rally behind those young people. Obviously, Memorial Stadium for football, at Devaney, at PBA for volleyball, not that long ago, basketball coming up. It's always a treat.
Yeah, it is always fun. And if you are from out of town, hey, 1040 O Street, a new place you can come down and check out here at 93.7 The Ticket. Grab yourself some coffee from the mill while you're at it, too. Let's jump into this discussion. Tony White. Of course, yesterday, Matt Rule addressed the rumors that Tony White maybe had been getting interest, and he said a search firm had contacted him. Tony White spoke today, was very thankful for Coach Rule basically standing up at the podium and saying what he said to the coaching firm, or the searching firm, is that he thinks that Tony White should absolutely be a head coach around the corner. And it's a little bit scary for Nebraska fans, a little bit scary for a rebuild that has obviously is so dependent on one side. We just spent a lot of time talking about how this is a 5-6 football team, maybe potentially 6-6 type football team. If this defense was where the offense was, I don't know if they'd win maybe 1 or 2 games this year. I mean, so that's how kind of that's why there is a bit of a fear factor here in losing Tony White. But also reports from the Union Tribune out in San Diego that San Diego State has been in contact with Tony White about their head coaching job as well. Not a surprise to me. I think that it was not going to be a surprise. It would be surprising if he wasn't contacted. Now, remember, contacted doesn't mean first choice, doesn't mean he's at the top of their list. They've probably contacted a few different people about their interest in coaching San Diego State football. You've heard it from SIP if you've listened to the station There's a chance they might go on the offensive side of the ball because they've been making defensive hires the last couple of times they've had the chance to hire at San Diego State. But in any case, I always cheer for guys that were on Husker staffs before, and so it'd be fun to kind of see that. How big of a loss do you think it would be? And it's hard to gauge at this point, losing Tony White if he does leave this offseason.
It would be substantial. It would be a substantial loss for Nebraska, and I don't think that's narrative. I think Tony White has done a great job connecting with his players. He'll tell you he needs to be better, and I'd agree. For all the criticizing we've done of the offensive side of the ball and the coordinator for some of the play calls, it's now been 3 or 4 weeks, and I think the last 2 in a row that Tony White said, I've got to be better. I've got to put my guys in better positions to succeed. And he does, right? Maybe be more aggressive in some places, free his guys up. But that's just, one thing to say, hey, not everyone's perfect, right? There's room for growth for everyone. But think about where Nebraska ranked in terms of rush defense last year. The defensive line was a huge question mark coming into the year. Tony White, I think, installed a scheme with help from Terrence Knight and coaching those guys up that has unlocked the best version of Ty Robinson, of Nash Hutmaker, of Jamari Butler. Blaise Gunnerson is a starter already. Cam Lenhart's flashed as a freshman. Throw Principal Iman Mielon in there as a quasi defensive end, outside linebacker type of guy. So yeah, Tony White, his presence would be a big loss. I think his coaching ability would be a big loss. And you and I were kind of throwing this out there. There's no immediate in-house replacement, which is fine, right? Nebraska should probably, when Tony White, right? We're not trying to push him out the door, but other schools are seeing what we're seeing. Tony White will get a head coaching job somewhere. When that happens, Nebraska can't be afraid, and specifically Matt Rule can't be afraid to, go against maybe his tendency to bring his own guys along. And don't be afraid to look outside the family for a proven defensive coordinator that can keep things rolling at the level they are.
Well, I thought it was interesting, too, because Matt Rule said if you looked at where he had been, his offenses were always kind of middle of the pack, and his defenses were pretty darn good. This despite being that Matt Rule, you don't necessarily consider him to have one overwhelming strength, more he's just kind of the CEO coach, and that being his strength. He did point out that his defense, and when he said that, and I kind of thought of it, it's like, well, yeah, it's been Phil Snow with you the whole time. So, I mean, if you're going to bring back Phil Snow, then yeah, I'll have a belief that I can look back at your past numbers. But he does. That's been his guy in college and in Carolina. Phil Snow was his defensive coordinator at all those stops. So Tony White being a guy that he went out and made a great hire, obviously one that a lot of people were questioning. How's the 3-3-5 going to work in the Big Ten? I think we have to give credit to Matt Rule for that hire, because I think there's plenty of the narrative this offseason, and I know it already is there, is what if he would have handled the quarterback room differently. And so there's going to be negatives that we're going to point out to this team about what if they could have done, what if they couldn't have done this. But to go out there and get Tony White for a Matt Rule who hasn't had too many chances or opportunities to go out there and pick a defensive coordinator. He's done it a few times on offense, really hit a home run in doing so. So I would hope that he would trust himself, or, whoever he leaned on to kind of eventually get to Tony White, that he could do it again, because I agree with you. I just would not be overwhelmed by anybody on the defensive staff right now getting a promotion. Again, it's not to say anything against them. They're all just most of them are just relatively young.
That's the thing. You don't want, I don't mean this as a talking down on the rest of the defensive coaches, right? They've all done good work in their own way, but let's just go at it level by level. Terrence Knighton is the defensive line coach. Hasn't been in the college game very long. Yes, has NFL credentials as a player, but relatively new to the coaching game. Not saying he can't do it. It would be a leap of faith for Matt Rule to do that. Rob Dvorak, rising young coach, was featured on a couple lists earlier in the year. Linebackers have been solid. I haven't necessarily seen improvement from the middles necessarily. Reimer has been himself. Henrich has kind of faded into the background. John Bullock seems like a staff project, not just a Rob Dvorak one. The Jack linebacker spot too, haven't seen nearly the production I think Nebraska needs out of it. But again, young coach. I think that'd be a risk. Evan Cooper's the recruiting guy for Matt Rule. Don't want to put that on him, right? Clearly, Matt Rule trusts Evan Cooper and his eye for talent recognition and acquisition. I think that'd be a lot to ask him to be your point man in recruiting and put coordinating a whole defense on him. So I don't think Matt Rule wants Evan Cooper to give up recruiting either. So I don't think he would get the defensive coordinator position, which leads me to believe there's either a trusted analyst on staff somewhere down the rankings, but that would be a leap as well. Or I'm in lockstep with you. Matt Rule should be looking outside of his own house to go make an outside hire.
Well, and then from there, what would be interesting is obviously you want the continuity. The defense is playing well. A 3-3-5 guy. If you're going to kind of go through that route again, that limits your pool of guys that you're looking for.
It sure does. I'm going to go to the text line here, 402-464-5685. If you have any thoughts, that's the Starter Heyman text line. Pooh Bear asks, is the defense really as good as we think? The Big Ten West offenses are terrible, and Colorado threw all over them. Pooh Bear, that's what we've been saying for a while now. It's a good defense, right? You can only play the schedule in front of you. Nebraska has, for the most part, limited bad offenses. If you're allowing, what's Nebraska allowing, like 17 points a game?
Yeah,
somewhere in that neighborhood. That should be more than enough to win you most games. Scoring is up in college football over the last few years. It's trending down now with a lot of older defensive guys coming back with their COVID years. But even if you're averaging, 25 points per game, 28 points per game, get a touchdown per quarter, this defense is good enough for where Nebraska was this year, right? Yes, we've been saying it. The defense needs to take a step up. I said that and got ripped for it, is that this is a good defense. It's not a great defense, because as much success as they have early in games, they've allowed a big play or two at the end of games when they've been playing so well. Just a drive out of the blue. Like, why couldn't you be that good for one more drive? And Nebraska already has 2 or 3 more wins already in the bank. I get it. The offense is more to blame. But yes, there's certainly room for the defense to improve. Sure, the numbers are inflated by playing the competition they are, but a bad defense would still get shredded by these teams. Look what happened to Illinois' defense against Indiana. That's a defense that was top 5 in the nation last year, and Indiana with a backup quarterback shredded it. So yes, it is to some degree a product of the schedule, but they're still taking advantage of it and making most of the plays on it. So I think the defense is being talked about appropriately.
Oh, yeah. And for the numbers, by the way, total defense giving up around 308 yards per game. That ranks 15th nationally. Scoring defense is 18.7 points per game. That ranks 19th scoring nationally. So that's top 20 categories for both. And again, regardless of the schedule you play, it should factor into how maybe historically compare this defense to other defenses of Nebraska past, or yes, it's not a great defense. It's a good defense, but especially considering it's a year one defense, that's why people are so impressed with Tony White, is that he was able to come in here and turn that around. Now, I will say this, also give credit to Coach Bill Busch and the defensive, interims last year, who turned that around from absolute disaster to begin the season to a pretty solid squad by the end of the season. I would say they've probably taken a step up. There's a little bit different personnel, obviously different situations as well. But I think that also jades the conversation a little bit, because if you just go year by year, you don't get the fact that, well, with Coach Chin, for whatever reason, that was not his year. That defense was terrible. To by the end of the season, it was pretty good. So you have to kind of figure out like the middle ground for those statistics.
You absolutely do. So I think part of it too is we're factoring in the schedule when we talk about the defense. We're maybe adding 5 or 6 points on their per game average if the schedule were tougher. We're adding another 50, 60 yards per game on average if the schedule was tougher. And that's part of what makes this frustrating, is that it seemed like there's a runway for Nebraska to maybe, win a few more of these games that have been on the schedule, thanks to its defense playing at the level it has. But if Nebraska was going to be a, caliber of team that's going to win the Big Ten West, it would dominate to Iowa's level. It's the defense that's really helped Nebraska get to 5 wins. But look at Iowa at 9, doing essentially the same things on a per game basis as Nebraska offensively. But the defense is just that 1.5 steps ahead that has them at 9 wins instead of 5 with 1 game to go.
Well, and that's that too. And I know they have been without Cooper these last couple of games. That's why, but he would, why I like watching Iowa football is you have to, they're going to have to make a play that otherwise isn't, the plan for a football team. Last week, before I could really get into what was going on against Iowa, Illinois, it was 2-0. I mean, that's what Iowa does. But to kind of your point, my point earlier about what this defense is away from being really good is, I think, it's a Cooper DeJean. I mean, you get a legitimate playmaker, top draft pick, all Big Ten defensive player of the year candidate, and that's a lot to ask for. Don't get me wrong; that's hard to find those guys. But I think maybe Nebraska's defense might be somewhat on par with Iowa minus Cooper DeJean, which is why I think why I think this game of coming on Friday is especially interesting.
I'm with you. Back to Big Bird. He and I have been going back and forth on some numbers, but he throws this out here. If Tony White gets poached, next year will be our 4th defensive coordinator in 3 years. Here's the thing. It's true. It's a fact that amount of change is tough for players to deal with, which is why it's a credit to guys like Ty Robinson, Nash Hutmaker, even, your Reimers and your Newsomes for being as productive as they have been with all the changeover. But it's also the mark of a good coach and a good staff if they're getting hired away for promotions, right? Tony White probably, most likely, won't leave Nebraska to go be a defensive coordinator somewhere else unless USC pays him $3 million a year to be the defensive coordinator. LSU pays him $2.5 million a year to be the defensive coordinator, right? Like, that's on the table. It's just not that likely. So if Tony White is going to take a step up in title, if he's going to be a head coach, even though it would be a group of 5 program in San Diego State, head coach is a promotion from defensive coordinator. If he goes back to Syracuse to be their head coach, that's a Power 5 head coaching job. It's hard to turn that down. The best teams typically have the best coaching staffs, and those guys that are in assistant roles get chances to be head coaches because they've worked alongside a great head coach, typically. Like, look at the turnover on Nick Saban's staff. How many different offensive coordinators has Alabama had? Clemson's almost the exception to the rule, where think about how long they had Tony Elliott and Brett Venables around for. Even just look closer to home, John Cook. How many of his assistants have gone on to bigger, better things? It's part of the challenge in college to be able to have assistants that elevate their players, that prove they can be head coaches down the line, and then find someone to fill their shoes, right? The players are rotating. You can't just pay to keep them around forever like you can in the pros. And there's so many ways to step up. Even at a quote unquote destination job like Nebraska, there's still plenty of upward movement that these coaches can make. So the challenge for Matt Rule and really any college coach is when you are successful on one side of the ball and your coordinators getting looks for a head coaching job, or your position coaches are getting looked at to be coordinators, to take the Matt Rule approach and say, we really want you around. We'll make you maybe a better financial offer to see if we can entice you to stay because we appreciate the work you're doing and we would love to have you still around, but we're not going to stand in your way to take that promotion. I'm glad I identified you. I appreciate the work that you've put in, but you're ready for that next step. It's going to hurt to watch you go, but I'm excited to see what you do in the future.
Yeah, and it has been something that Nebraska has also kind of missed is, those coaches, because this Tony White situation would be very much like Bo Pelini, where he came in 1 year and really impressed Nebraska fans and Nebraska, people, not enough to get the head job, obviously. Went away, did some things at Oklahoma and LSU, and then, eventually when Nebraska job came open, we're like, hey, we liked him. He's doing well. He's coming up. Let's go back and get him. Obviously for Tony White, it'd be the same thing. 1 year at Nebraska, and then he'd be out in the San Diego States of the world. And then eventually at some point, maybe if the Nebraska job comes open, you can go back to this year and say, well, we liked what we saw from him. Nebraska, and whether it's Tony White or, somebody else down the line, just good to have some of those oars in the water where Nebraska hasn't had, too much of that, lures in the water, I should say, but it hasn't had too much of that because you haven't had successful coaching staffs to begin with. So you don't want to pick away from coaching staffs that weren't very good. Also, it is worth noting too that all this, it's not a foregone conclusion that Tony White is gone. Again, he is going to get interviews. He's going to get interest, but he might not be the top names on the jobs, at least as far as he wants. And Matt Rule was very stern and serious about yesterday at the podium saying too, you got to be careful about which job you choose, which is something Scott Frost was very, particular about when he was coming up as well.
On that front, just a hypothetical to throw out there. If you're Tony White and it's been your dream to be a head coach, you're getting these interviews, would you rather take the San Diego State job or the Syracuse job?
I think, obviously the easy answer would be, Power 5 job in Syracuse.
Power 5 job that paid Dino Babers $4 million a year.
Yeah.
San Diego State paid Brady Hoke like 1.27
Yeah.
per year, but it's Syracuse, New York. Like, I get it. You've been there. Maybe you know what it takes, but that's a tough Power 5 football job. You have all the talent in the world out in California that you need to build a team. You were there for a really long time as well. And even if they are paying you less, you have the chance to fill a power vacuum. With a lot of those teams going to the Big Ten, you have a chance to own West Coast football for what it is. So I think my gut still probably says the Syracuse job is better, but I would have a tough time telling Boise State and San Diego State no if they offered me.
Yeah, I mean, those are absolute jobs that you definitely take if you get the offer. You're right, though. I mean, because that can be, and the money makes it very difficult to turn down, obviously, maybe substantially, maybe twice the amount of money that you might get at Syracuse. But you're talking about going to a bottom of the conference job, a better conference, but a harder hole to dig out of, as opposed to San Diego State, where they expect to be pretty good. Now, they haven't been as good under Hoke this year, kind of been up and down with him. But for the longest time, they are the who's who of Mountain West football. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, obviously you'd have a decision to make. I think, again, money ultimately talks, and you have to have belief in yourself. And, he did have success as a defensive coordinator in Syracuse, so you'd probably take that one. But it is worth considering.
We do have a text, too, from One-Eyed Ray. Doesn't Bill Busch seem like the obvious first choice as a replacement? Coach Busch would be great. It depends on if he wants it. And here's the other thing. Maybe Matt Rule, has seen the light and would welcome Coach Busch back, but he also had a chance to keep him, make him an offer so Coach Busch wouldn't go. So we're very grateful to have Coach Busch and his insight here. I don't want him to leave. If he wants to get back into coaching and he has the opportunity to do it at Nebraska could sure do a whole lot worse than bringing Coach Busch back, but that takes mutual interest on both sides.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll talk more about this more in just the sports world in general. We got to take a quick break here on 93.7 The Ticket. We'll be back after this.
Gary with Gary Michaels Clothiers Lincoln. As we celebrate our 40th anniversary, which started in Hastings in 1983, I often reflect on the Lincoln men's stores no longer here. They are McGee's, Ben Simons, Landon's, Rothschild, Sir Winston, Post and Nickel, Ragman, Murray's, Miller and Payne, and Joseph A. Bank. You know where I'm coming from. Gary Michaels has been battle-tested, and we are committed to serve Nebraskans as your premier store for men for many years to come. Gary Michaels Clothiers, 56th and Pine Lake Road, Lincoln.
Tune in to the Malone Radio Show from 9 to 10 p.m. every Sunday night to learn more about the Malone Center's goal to eliminate multi-generational poverty in Lincoln. It's the Malone Radio Show every Sunday night from 9 to 10 p.m. on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Are you working in or looking to get into the electrical construction industry? The electrical workers of local union 265 are now hiring licensed journeymen and apprentices and are offering great pay and benefits. Call Mike at 402-875-1034 to apply. Start your electrical career today.
You don't think about your roof very often, but you should never take it for granted. Roofing Service Company takes every measure to provide you with the highest quality roofing solution. Whether it's a new roof installation, roof repair, or a re-roofing project, their overall goal is to provide you with a pleasant experience and a long-lasting roof. If you have a need for siding or gutters, they're your place too. Visit roofingservicecompany.com for more info today. Ironhide Construction is hiring. They're looking for hardworking, self-motivated individuals who are team players. Ironhide Construction has openings for an experienced project manager, estimator, apprentice, skilled laborer, and erector or installer. They will train the right people and make sure you understand the position and requirements. At Ironhide Construction, it's own it, be honest, and do it right. Apply today and learn more about their other benefits at ironhideconstruction.com. where they're committed to you every step of the way.
At Jimmy John's, we don't make sandwiches. We make the sandwich of sandwiches. We use fresh veggies because we don't hate salads. We just feel bad for them. We make our sandwiches exactly how you want because you're the one who's eating it. And we bake bread all day, every day because stale bread isn't bread. It's croutons. Sandwich history is written by the victors. Good thing we have legible handwriting. Jimmy John's, the sandwich of sandwiches. Order pickup or delivery on the app.
Belmont Chiropractic and Novotny Nutrition and Wellness specialize in getting rid of people's pain quickly and permanently. For 31 years, they've been extremely successful with advanced techniques in pain relief using spinal adjustments and decompression, detoxification, diet and lifestyle modification, and more. They are fully equipped to handle the most seasonal athlete, weekend warrior, car accidents, strains, sprains, and more. Is there anywhere you're experiencing pain on your body, or are you fighting decreased energy and depression? Consult Belmont Chiropractic and Novotny Nutrition and Wellness first at 402-476-8619.
This is Jeff Essing, owner of Farrell's Extreme Body Shaping and host of Fitness Fanatics. Over the years, we've helped countless of people gain strength, lose fat, build confidence, and change their lives. And it all starts with the Farrell's 10-Week Challenge. Now is the best time to enroll during the Black Friday sale. You can join the January 10-Week Challenge for half price. That's 10 weeks of kickboxing, strength training, and nutrition coaching for 50% off. Head to theticketfm.com and click on the banner on the homepage to enroll today. Farrell's Extreme Body Shaping at 40th and Yankee Hill and 70th and Vine.
I'm Christy. I used to smoke cigarettes. I had smoker's cough and severe shortness of breath, and I knew I had to quit. Then I tried e-cigarettes, but I just ended up using both. I really didn't start to get better until I quit smoking completely. My tip to you is just cutting down on the number of cigarettes you smoke isn't enough.
Call the Nebraska Tobacco Quit Line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW, 1-800-784-8669. Paid for by Tobacco Free Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
You're listening to the Happy Hour with Nick Sainert.
Herbie the Fourth ate his first solid food today, prompting a response of nothing but steaks all week for the Nebraska offensive line.
Then Enrique Alvarez Clary.
No more peaches and carrots for Herbie the Seventh. Baby food be damned.
Sponsored by Empire Fence and Netting on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
We are wrapping things up here on Happy Hour on 93.7 The Ticket. Stay tuned. We've got kickoff here in about 40 minutes. Well, it's about 2:45 kickoff, I should say. So about 55 minutes away from Norfolk Catholic, which for some reason I can't say in Ord. So the Nick Sainert will be out at Memorial Stadium for that call. We've also got a little bit of On the Block. We'll call it On the Block coming up here in about 10 minutes. Yeah. But we got to wrap up the happy hour here on 93.7 The Ticket. It was announced today, by the way, that in 2027, Wisconsin will open up in Ireland against Pittsburgh. Do you think that's something the local Irish crowd will be interested in?
Yes, they've showed out pretty well for the first couple games over there. Wisconsin and Pittsburgh.
It's an odd pairing.
Huh. It's like peak late 2000s, like Sweet 16 basketball of a football game.
Yeah.
I would tell Luke Fickell not to onside kick it. That's my advice for him.
Learn some things. Notre Dame obviously does very well over there for obvious reasons. I suppose this probably is a little bit more intriguing just to the I don't know, general Irishman, maybe than Nebraska and Northwestern when they were coming off their bad seasons. We'll have to see where Wisconsin and Pittsburgh are. Hopefully Pat Narduzzi still makes it there. He's had a tough time.
I was just say, is Narduzzi still there? I have a hard time believing that.
He's would you think that he's going to make it through this year? They're really struggling this year. He's very vocal. He kind of had his team turn up against him a little bit this year, but they did just come off an ACC championship a few years ago. Do you think is he good enough there that he can basically have a bad year and then have another year to fix it, you think?
He's got next year.
Yeah.
I would be very surprised if Pitt pulls the trigger on letting him go this year. It's just wild to think about that he's been there since 2015.
Yeah,
that's
a long reign.
So long ago now that, 65 and 49 overall. He's had him ranked in all but 3 years, including this year. Now they've only finished ranked the last 2 years. Like, he's a good coach. I almost wonder though if he's kind of Northern Appalachia's answer to Dabo Swinney in some ways. Kind of defensive-minded guy speaking out about what he thinks quite a bit. Pat Narduzzi's a fine coach. He doesn't necessarily move the needle for me. So if Pitt's fine with 8 or 9 wins, I don't know if they can do much better than that, then there's no real reason to let him go. But if he keeps being so vocal and running players off, then you get more 4 and 8s and 5 and 7s and stuff like that, then yeah, he maybe has 2 or 3 more years of leash.
I was like that comedy man. He was just doing some podcast or something before, remember when Whipple was coming in and said Whipple passed the ball too much or something. Then Nebraska fans got all over him, and then they watched Whipple as a coordinator and got mad at him for passing the ball too much. It's kind of funny to see, all that stuff go around. I don't know why. I just always loved Pat Narduzzi, especially when he was with Mark D'Antonio and those really good Michigan State teams. Is when Narduzzi was the defensive coordinator there, and he had some really tough defenses, and that's why I really liked him at Michigan State. And it's kind of the same thing, Michigan State, Pittsburgh. Those are places where you could recruit, but you kind of have to develop quite a bit at each of those places. I'd like to see him just. Like LSU or something. Obviously, maybe as a coordinator more than a head coach, but where the talent just is kind of go out there and pick it. I mean, I think he could still have a heck of a defense if he could put some talent together.
Nick wants Dave Aranda as his defensive coordinator. Do you want Pat Narduzzi as your defensive coordinator if you're starting a staff?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Dave Aranda, by the way, also should he make it through this year? Baylor has really ever since he was whispered about the Nebraska job. I don't think he's won a game since then.
Dave Aranda deserved the head coaching look. I get him in Texas. I mean, being at LSU for as long as he was, I still just think he's a Big Ten guy. I still think that's more his vibe. I mean, Baylor 2-7 his first year, 12-2, 6-6 last year with a loss in the bowl game, and then 3-8 this year. He might have one more year. I don't think they fire him this year, but if Baylor gets off to a slow start next year, Dave Aranda might be maybe a Group of 5 head coach, but maybe even a Power 5 defensive coordinator again in 2025.
Well, and it's interesting because Wisconsin just had that run, and Dave Aranda was part of it, and where they just had defensive coordinators they could shuffle in and out of there and still have top 10 defenses. And so those guys went on. What's the Cal head coach's name? Justin Wilcox was the first one, then Aranda, and then Brian Leonard last year, and then nobody picked him up.
Jim Leonard,
excuse me, yeah. And nobody picked him up. And in Wisconsin's defense, which was good enough again to beat Nebraska, hasn't been as good as when those 3 guys were there. But when they've gone on, and maybe that was some of the hesitancy for anybody to pick up Leonard was, well, Wilcox and Aranda moved on, and they're not exactly doing great, though both of them still have Power 5 head coaching jobs.
Do you know where Jim Leonard is right now?
Isn't he? I thought he was like an analyst somewhere. Is he an analyst?
He's a senior football analyst at Illinois.
That's just kind of good move by Brett Bielema, I guess, but that is very surprising, actually.
I can't believe that didn't come up in Illinois week. I guess we were all too busy wondering about Nebraska to look into the opponent. But yeah, Jim Leonard's going to be a defensive coordinator next year. Dave Aranda will be in 2 years. I feel pretty confident in saying that. And Narduzzi might be too old to go be a DC again. Not that he's like ancient or over the hill or anything, but
he's been a coach, like you said, since 2015. You might
head
not
coach
want to
for
go
that
back.
long. Yeah. So
Got
again,
the
maybe
money.
he could retire at the MAC or something, but I don't think he goes back to coordinating.
Yeah. That's too bad because I love Pat Narduzzi, the defensive coordinator. But that's okay, I suppose. Hey, well, we just went through some names there just in case.
Big Bird's with you. He wants Narduzzi as the DC.
Yeah, see, maybe let's hope Narduzzi gets fired and Aranda gets fired and Nebraska's just got all these options. Maybe for if Tony White does leave. Although they'll still probably just promote from within and we'll all question it. That'll wrap it up for happy hour. Once again, on the block coming up next, it'll be a short on the block as we've got a 2:45 kickoff. Class C2, Norfolk Catholic and Ord coming up here just a bit on 93.7 The Ticket. But we'll be back with more sports talk on the block on 93.7 The Ticket coming up next.
This is Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. Also online at theticketfm.com.
On the internet.
KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket.
If you're like most guys with symptoms, you don't want to ask for help. Perhaps a free consult with the men's health experts will encourage you. What could it hurt? Limitless knows exactly how to treat your symptoms. They will verify with a blood test, and in a very short time, you'll feel like a new man. So don't drag your feet. You're not going to feel better unless you get help. The providers at Limitless know what they're doing. To receive your custom treatment plan, schedule online at limitlessmail.com and get your life back.
With 4 Lincoln locations, but now 5 Lincoln locations. That's 25% more locations than there used to be. Can you even imagine a world where there's only 4 Lincoln Mill locations? Feels like ages ago. We were all so young then. The Mill on 11, located right alongside the 93.7 The Ticket Studios at 1040 O Street. The Southern Pecan Cake from Beatrice Bakery. They don't just let you call anything Southern, especially when it's baked right here in Nebraska. There are standards you have to meet, like a rich, decadent, moist caramel cake? Check. Bursting with too many large pecans to count? Check. Big enough to share with the whole group? Check. But delicious enough that you won't want to share? A big check on that one. The Southern Pecan Cake, the newest cake to the Beatrice Bakery lineup. Try it for yourself at Beatrice Bakery. Online at BeatriceBakery.com. Welcome to our world of yum.
Hi everyone, Kendall Warnock with A1 Automotive in downtown Lincoln. If you're looking for an automotive repair facility you can genuinely trust, we would be grateful for the opportunity to earn your business repairing your vehicle. We have ASE master technicians and qualified to work on a variety of vehicles from Hondas to Porsches, Jaguars to Toyotas, and Chevrolets to Fords. We pride ourselves on customer service and relationships, and we would be grateful for the opportunity to serve you. Give us a call at 402-477-4660. A1 Automotive, always honest answers.
At Koppel Chevrolet GMC, we are thankful for so many things this year, starting with our great employees, a generous community, our military personnel, and most importantly, our loyal customer base that continues to drive that money-saving mile of Louisville. Hi, this is Sean Callahan, and on behalf of everybody at Koppel, we want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving and safe travels to wherever they may take you. Happy holidays from Koppel Chevrolet GMC.
Houses? They're expensive. And once you buy one, you're kind of stuck with it for a while. You need to make sure you get your best house for the best price. You need Ben Bleicher and his team of pros at Professional Realty Group. They'll take the time to figure out what's important for you in your dream home, and they have the expertise to find the hidden issues that could surprise you after the sale. That's professional knowledge, proactive service. We call that potential. Ben Bleicher and the team at Professional Realty Group of Berkshire Hathaway's Home Service Ambassador. Find more online at prg-ne.com.
Ready to make this season unforgettable? Celebrate with Liberty First Credit Union's low-rate debt consolidation loan. Combine all those bills into one affordable monthly payment with quick access to funds. Imagine all the extra cash for holiday shopping sprees, festive parties, or that well-deserved vacation. Stop by any of their branches or visit libertyfirstcu.com to find out more about their low-rate debt consolidation loan. Make this holiday season one to remember and celebrate with Liberty First Credit Union, banking with purpose.
Hey guys, Jake Sorensen here from Early Break. The garage door at our house has been needing replacement for a couple years, and a few months ago, we finally did something about it. Steve's Garage Doors and Services was great through the whole process in providing options and also going to the next level to get a door that was approved by our HOA. And best of all, the removal of the old door and installation of the new door was done smoothly with no issues. Call Steve's Garage Doors and Services today at 402-480-2840.
Vershawn Jackson for Brandt Excavating. Brandt's been in business for 29 years, and they specialize in a variety of things. If you're looking for someone to get the job done in precision demolition, excavating, trucking, mass grading, and site prep, Brandt is the place to call. To set up a quote or learn more, call Brandt Excavating at 402-474-4113 or go to BrandtExcavating.com. They're also hiring, so join the team today. Brandt Excavating, a part of the Bauer brand, who reminds you, go Big Brand!
Tailored Lights is your go-to local manufacturer and installer of the best landscape lighting. Tailored Lights is excited to highlight the architecture of your home or business and provide a warm environment that feels safe. And for those outside the Lincoln area, they do ship across the country and are happy to work with anyone near or far with lights anywhere from 18 inches to 110 inches. Enhance your curb appeal with an exquisite Tailored Light today. Call 402-432-2572 or go to tailoredlights.com.
This is On the Block with Strick and Austin. Nebraska Basketball Hall of Famer and 9-year NBA vet, Eric Strickland.
Strickland for three! And you're going to go out of here as the Big 8 tournament champion.
Middle school basketball coaching legend and Duke basketball shooting coach in his mind. Austin Orman. Coming at you live from the heart of Lincoln, America. On air and online at theticketfm.com. Brought to you by Mary Ellen's Food for the Soul. This is On the Block with Strick and Austin.
It is Austin, and it's the better basketball player than Eric Strickland. Jake Bach over.
That's right.
On the board. I'd take Bach over Strickland. No, well, maybe I would. I don't know. I'll say that because you're here. I probably know better than to say that to Strick's face. So I'll say it since Strick's not here today. Getting the day off. He was in Phoenix over the weekend, getting his charity thing on. Believe it or not, Strick, big heart. Love that guy. Appreciate him. Also appreciate Mary Ellen's Food for the Soul sponsoring On the Block. They're down at 29th and Pine Lake here in Lincoln. Not open today. Should be open tomorrow. I would say check their online presence, social media, and or website for listings over Thanksgiving and Black Friday. I sure hope they're open on Black Friday and through the weekend. I mean, there's not a better way to spend your feast week than with a feast from Mary Ellen's Food for the Soul. Make sure you go check them out. Tell them On the Block sent you. Tell them Austin and Strick say what's up. I don't even know what to tell you to get. It's all good. You can't go wrong. So make sure you get down there and check it out. Over the weekend, either you need to eat your pain away from a Husker football loss to Iowa, or you need to celebrate. What better way to do that than with Mary Ellen's Food for the Soul? Again, 402-464-5685, the numbers for you to get into the program. We also do want to shout out our friends at Allo. Allo does sponsor our VIP line. We won't go there today, but Allo did receive the 2023 Higher Vets Medallion Award from the U.S. Department of Labor. And that's a big deal. Allo is doing a lot to help veterans in our community here in Nebraska. They were the only large company in Nebraska listed as an employer with over 500 employees to receive the highest level of distinction, the Platinum Award. So a big shout out to our friends at Allo for their work with veterans, hiring them, recognizing their skills, integrating them into this Lincoln community. And hey, they give us channel 951 as well for you to watch if you use Allo for all your home internet needs. All right, Bach, I'm using my Allo subscription to watch Feast Week. I am a big college basketball guy. We'll have post-game tomorrow night for Nebraska and Duquesne. We can get into that in a little bit. But the big headlining tournament that everyone's talking about right now is the Maui Invitational. That's actually not in Maui. It's in Honolulu, of course, with the wildfires. It affected the Civic Center that it's normally held at. So it's being played at Hawaii's home gym in Honolulu right now. Tennessee beats Syracuse. Purdue rolls over Gonzaga. The Zags made it a game in the first half. Kansas didn't have any problem with Chaminade, but the beloved Silver Swords did cover. They covered the 43-point spread. And then the headlining game of the night, at least for my opinion, this tournament, you had Marquette and UCLA. Marquette ends up winning that one. So tonight, Tennessee, Purdue, and Kansas, Marquette. Which of those two games did you give the appointment viewing label to?
I would say Tennessee, Purdue. I think, maybe it's just the Big Ten guy in me, I suppose. But also, I've always respected Rick Barnes. I don't think Texas basketball has ever been back to what they were under Rick Barnes since letting him go. So
they haven't lost to Nebraska with Kevin Durant since Rick Barnes was there.
He consistently had good teams. He must have had a bad year, one or two, and then they, moved on from him. I can't remember exactly how that ended. He's been really good at Tennessee. And that's always a team that I want to get, I know it's a little early, but I want to get a look at Tennessee before a tournament because I can always bet on a Rick Barnes team to make a run, especially the level of athleticism you usually can get at Tennessee with some of their bigs.
Tennessee is a personal dislike, least favorite of mine, not just because of the fact they beat Duke last year, really manhandled them in a bar brawl that was labeled as a basketball game. They're athletic as heck. They don't play a lot of offense. They're, to me, I think what Wisconsin has wanted to be, more athletic, maybe slightly better shooting. Zakai Ziegler is a stud. Josiah Jordan James is really good. Freaking Santiago Vescovi is back. But Purdue is a fascinating matchup for them. Obviously, no one in college basketball matches up with Zach Edey as tall as he is. Nebraska did an okay job forcing him, off of his spots before. Zach Edey, to me, is the way for Purdue to win this game. I don't trust Purdue's guards. I still don't trust Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. They're fine. They're okay. They need to prove a lot to me. To me, I think Tennessee wins this game on the perimeter if it has a chance.
That's interesting. It's always hard to, and especially it was good for me just to see Purdue get Gonzaga, and I'm cheering for them. I want a Purdue team that I can believe in March because I want a Big Ten team that I can believe in March.
Which is fair, but let's not forget Purdue did this last year. Purdue was on the fringes of the top 25 last year. They go to the PK 85 up in Portland and roll through it. Edey was a revelation. They shot it pretty well from distance, and they beat Duke in that tournament. A couple other teams. I think Xavier was one of them that they played somewhere along the line. That was Purdue's coming out party. They've gotten a lot of hype since then. They stayed highly rated. I'm not out on Purdue. I still, despite their early struggles, trust Michigan State more. I like their guard play. I think Sissoko is an underrated big. They have a couple wings, but that combination of Walker and Hogard is just so good. I just trust them to be able to make shots by the end of the year. So that's where I have my eyes in the Big Ten. The bottom of this Maui bracket, though, maybe the game of the tournament for my money is that Kansas-Marquette game. Kansas is wearing disgusting uniforms. I do not like them at all.
What are they wearing?
They're mostly Kansas blue, but they have some like sky blue like flowers like you would see in LA on them up and down the jersey and the pants. I'm not buying them. I just between those and the Nationals cherry blossom uniforms, just not a fan of it. So I think Kansas is doing too much. Marquette, to me, though, is really in prove-it mode. Kolek back. Iguodaro had a huge dunk last night. There's some people saying that these could be the Final Four teams. It's a loaded tournament, but come on. You're not getting 4 Final Four teams from the same early season tournament.
Yeah, not likely, but it is, college basketball, especially without a major power that's kind of like ruled this, like when Kentucky under Coach Calipari, they'd have new guys every year. And obviously he's still there, but when they were really on the run, it was like, okay, that's the team to beat. Duke at times has been, so there's like these teams that you can go to and just believe, as top teams to knock off. Like, what was last year's Final Four? I mean, because usually when you're saying Final Four, I'm like trying to think, well, I would pick Michigan State or Duke, or, you go through those names. But last year it was like San Diego State and a UConn team nobody expected in the championship game. I should say nobody expected because they got going there late. But it wasn't the UConn of old that we thought. At least we thought that way. And then they went on and win the championship. Is there a team in college basketball or a few teams that like you would feel really good about saying that's a Final Four team?
A lot of people would say Kansas, which I get, I understand it. I just don't think they shoot it well enough. I think they need some development there. I also, Hunter Dickinson's a great player. Don't get me wrong. I am worried about his effect on that locker room. I just think there's something to Hunter Dickinson that by the end of the year, he will just be grating on his teammates' nerves. So that's something I'm watching out for. UConn, maybe slightly less balanced than last year. They need Donovan Clingan back. I don't say they're a lock for sure. Purdue has to answer a lot of postseason questions. Florida Atlantic, last year's surprise team, just lost to Bryant in a game. Duke doesn't have an interior presence and needs to shoot it better from outside. Texas, I'm not sold on. Carolina's got a lot to prove. Michigan State, I think, could get to that level by the end of the year. Gonzaga's a step back from what they were. UCLA probably not as good. So, no, I think this is as wide open a year as we've seen in college basketball in a long time.
Well, I know we got to those conversations last year, and I remember specifically listening to you and Strick talk about it, where, is college basketball in a good place without those dominant teams, without, the blue bloods being the blue bloods, and just recognizable names around college basketball circles. Do you think college basketball is in a good spot because of that? Or do you think that, to me, it fades a little bit, fades away every year, like the regular season. Then by the time March Madness comes around, who really cares? You get back in there and you're all excited and you're breaking down every team. But regular season college basketball really has become, even just especially for me, focus on my team. And that's Nebraska, obviously. And then, so it's kind of regional, very Big Ten structured, especially for me too. But I know you're definitely a national guy, but just kind of looking at it from others' perspectives, do you think that the sport's in a good spot without dominating teams at the top?
I think it's been proven that sports do better if there's that big bad villain that everyone's gunning for to some degree. maybe it's rose-colored glasses, but I wouldn't be shocked to know that that 2014-15 Kentucky team drew a lot of eyeballs on its quest to 40-0 with a lot of stars too. So I think there's something to having that. But I also think that college basketball is wildly different from college football, and that the regular season is longer and the way you determine a champion is still different. That you can have a dominant regular season team or a trendy pick to make the Final Four, but it is exponentially more difficult to pick the Final Four in college basketball than college football.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so basketball is still, I think, trying to carve out its niche. I think it has a reputation of being hard to watch because it's between high school and the pros. Obviously, we know that. The pros make too many shots for some people's liking, and high school is just a slog more often than not because there's just not a lot of development in a lot of cases. College is a weird in-between that I like, where you have those teams that can get out and run and fill it up. You have those teams that choose to defend at a high level. But any given night in college basketball, you never know who's on or off. You know, you never know if you're going to see a team's best performance or just see just the grossest sickos committeeist thing you've ever seen, which is what I appreciate about it. But I think for the general public, there need to be those guys like your Jimmer Fredettes to hold the attention through the regular season. Even Trae Young at Oklahoma, his battles with Kansas, I do think those drew a lot of eyeballs. But so much of college sports still is about the team brand and not the individual brand. So maybe women's basketball on the college side is healthier with someone like a Caitlin Clark, where people can't help but tune in. But I would say for the people that say, oh, college basketball is tough to watch, yeah, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, to a degree. It depends on the game that you like. I that's the part that I like about Big Ten football. Is that I certainly understand the other side of it, where people would say, "Oh, I hate watching that. That's ugly. You know, these aren't the best athletes." I love it. I like the defensive battle that's going to come down to a 13-12 type of game. So you know, you can kind of find your own interest in obviously, like you said, kind of niche audiences there. But I think you're absolutely right as far as like, you know, you don't have your, it's just, you're missing, you don't have even Chet Holmgren, you know, you don't have your Zion, you don't have a name that's just, you know, obviously if Wembanyama would have went to college ball, it would have been crazy. I mean, you know, we'd be talking about college basketball left and right and whatever team he's on. But you just don't have that draw yet. Now, like you said, some of those guys can rise up. Usually a 3-point shooting guard like a Trae Young or a Jimmer Fredette that you don't know about preseason that really just starts lighting it up. So, you know, maybe that name is yet to be seen and we'll see where that goes. But it's also just kind of calendar wise too. Like I don't have too much time to get into, I appreciate, and I have before when I was younger, watched these tournaments and gotten all excited they used to play like 24 hours straight of basketball. Did they do that this year?
No, they don't. That was that part of Bracket Busters, I think is what it used to be. Yeah.
I loved that. That was kind of fun. But now just with so many, you know, obviously this time of the year, there's so much going on in college football and the NFL and you know, NBA starting up. It kind of falls by the wayside to me, like outside of Nebraska, like I was saying again, which I'm excited for every night and every day that there's Nebraska basketball and pay attention to that. But that's very much, you know, laser focused on Nebraska and not necessarily the landscape of college basketball.
A lot going on too in the Bahamas and the battle for Atlantis. We just had the Empire Classic get done. UConn ends up beating both Indiana and Texas. UConn looks, like we just said, pretty solid. The ESPN Invitational that Nebraska was at down in Orlando has a pretty good field as well. I think 5 or 6 of those 8 teams were, 6 of the 8 NCAA teams or teams in that were NCAA tournament teams last year. Creighton will go down and play in the little 4-team deal that Nebraska did 5 years ago or so. So yes, it's still football season. A lot of great football on this weekend as well. Big games in the Big Ten. Obviously, I'll be locked into Nebraska, Iowa on CBS. But if you're burnt out of football or you're upset about a Nebraska loss and want to watch basketball instead, there's plenty for you to turn your eyes to over this feast week. Also, if you're looking for something to do, you know, after the Nebraska game over this weekend, if you're like me and post-Thanksgiving is when you can finally get into the Christmas mood, not before, we would encourage you to check out the Nebraska Christmas Lights show. It used to be down at Haymarket Park, where you would be able to drive through the parking lot for that. But this year it's moved to Star City Shores between 27th and 33rd Streets on Highway 2. Countless amounts of lights, synchronized music. You have to turn the radio station to it so you get the music as you drive through. And it's one price for one car. It's not a per person fee. On weekdays, if you go, again, starting on Black Friday, it's $20 per car. It's $25 per car on weekends. It's open from 5:30 to 11, 7 days a week, and you can get your tickets there. But Constantine was in with Bud Seinhorst on the Oliva Hour this weekend. He highly recommends that you buy your tickets online ahead of time at NebraskaChristmasLightsShow.com. Bach, I want to stick with college basketball for these last 10 minutes or so before we send people back out to Memorial Stadium. Nick Sainert will be on the call for the Class C2 state championship game with Norfolk Catholic and Ord. Nebraska basketball, off to its best start since the 2008-2009 season. They have a chance to match that. That team started 6-0. They welcome Duquesne to town. If you want to talk about the game a little bit, feel free, but I want to talk more about this stretch for Nebraska. Probably its toughest test so far, coming up with Duquesne tomorrow. A usually frisky Cal State Fullerton team then on Sunday. Then it's Creighton, Big Ten play, Kansas State. Nebraska will be favored against Duquesne, will be favored against Fullerton, will be favored against Minnesota. If Nebraska comes out of this stretch between tomorrow and December 17th with 3 losses, say they lose to Creighton, Michigan State, and Kansas State, does that change your outlook on what this team could be by the end of the year?
I think because it's early, it wouldn't necessarily. But I mean, I guess if you kind of think about it as opposed to winning one of those games, right? And then, like, I can't help but say, like, I want to say that it wouldn't, and I could be like firm and and not get it. But if they win one of those games, I'll be very ecstatic, very excited, and thinking about what they can do. So it would to a degree, but I like to kind of stay grounded a little bit and just kind of think about where this team is maybe. As it grows, it's still kind of dealing with some injury issues, still kind of getting Tamanaga back in to the rotation. Everybody's still kind of figuring out their roles on a given night, though I think they're pretty much, a lot of those guys are kind of settling in there. I guess, I think maybe it would, because then it would get to the point, too, of like, okay, they had their chances to really step it up, get a big win. Are they going to be the team that just, plays well against good teams but doesn't get over the edge?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you kind of get a concern for that, because you also have to realize, I think between what was it, would be Creighton, Michigan State, and Purdue, and I don't know when they
they play Purdue on January 9th.
January 9th, okay. Because I was thinking their top 10 battles are all pretty much within the next month and a half then.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of think about those chances of getting those huge victories that could really build a resume. They might be here. Now, again, with college basketball, who knows? Maybe Indiana will jump into the top there. So one of these teams, and you play another highly ranked team at some point. But as of right now, those opportunities are early on. So I think it does change a little bit, not of how I see the team growing, but just the opportunity cost that's right there is as far as building your resume. If they could get one of those wins, I've already seen a little bit of talk national, and people are starting to notice Nebraska started pretty well, and they've got a lot of depth. That could really turn the conversation from, they played a weak schedule and they've got a pretty good record, to, okay, once you get one of those wins, then it's like, okay, that's a legit team, and you could start seeing maybe others receiving vote here and there.
If Nebraska is going to pull an upset against Creighton, Michigan State, or Kansas State, in your mind, which game's most likely? Creighton at home, Michigan State at home, Kansas State in Manhattan.
Yeah, because Kansas State's the lowest rated team there. You might think that, but it is a road game. I think Creighton's really going to want payback. I'm a little worried about that.
Mm-hmm.
And Michigan State is just a mismatch if they get the guy. I'll still lean with Kansas State.
Kansas State has taken a step back from where it was last year. Again, I think the numbers would tell you that's most likely. I think it's Michigan State, though. I say that because if they're continuing to shoot the ball poorly, it's the second game of conference play. I think Nebraska does have a chance. I like Nebraska's wings. I think Rink Mass can draw Sissoko away. Now, if Michigan State goes nuclear like they did in the second half of last year's game, Nebraska's not going to win that one. But with Creighton having revenge on its mind, I think that's a really big deal. Not a Creighton lover, no love lost for the Blue Jays, obviously, but they're looking pretty scared. They're looking pretty good. Not to write Nebraska's chances off. It'll just look different than last year's game did. Kansas State, too, being on the road. Nebraska, went up to the Pentagon for a neutral game. That's essentially a home game. Going to Minnesota, that atmosphere is going to be nothing like it will be down in Manhattan. The Bramlage Coliseum, I've heard, is a great place to to play and watch a basketball game. I'm excited. I'll get to go to that one. I'll be covering it on the road on the 17th.
Octagon of Doom, is that what they
the
call it?
Octagon of Doom. That's right.
Love it.
So I'm excited to have now visited both a Pentagon and an Octagon for college basketball arenas. But I just think for Nebraska, Creighton's going to be tough too because they'll have a week off. Like, it's going to be nice to have that week to rest, recover, get guys integrated in practice, but to not go game speed for a week, that's a long break in a season. You get a couple days off between Creighton and Minnesota, and then a couple days off between Minnesota and Michigan State. But then there's another week break between Michigan State and Kansas State. We've seen Nebraska's schedules get so condensed over recent years. They're playing, back-to-backs in the COVID year right after that, 3 and 5 sort of things, an NBA style, which isn't good. But these guys need game reps, game rhythm, game routine. It's a pretty veteran team that's been around the block that should know how to handle it. But I still need to see more from Nebraska's offense that I think I would rather them, play every 3 or 4 days instead of having, a break that's that long, Bach, to potentially lose rhythm on offense.
Yeah, you could definitely see that impacting one of these games. But I do want to reiterate, too, is like we broke those games down, and maybe it wouldn't feel good if you lost them, is that I still feel with this team, and until shown otherwise, I will feel, I don't think there's a game on the schedule that I'm just going to be going into it thinking, well, Nebraska lost this game, is going to lose this game, and I'm just watching it just to, do the post-game show. I think that there's going to be an opportunity for this team if they can play well, obviously, on any given night, shoot well, especially against some of those better teams, they could get, knock them off.
Luke, Bigberg, Notorious B.I.B., Man Named Ashley, Twizzlers, Craig, all the rest of you, thanks for tuning in and tapping in on the Starter Heyman text line. That's enough for us back here in the studio for a couple hours. We will send you just up the block, Memorial Stadium. Nick Sainert standing by for the Class C2 state championship game. It's Ord, it's Norfolk Catholic, comes your way in 10 minutes or so.
It's fishing season. Bad actors are trolling your business emails, luring you and your employees to take the bait and